Alright, so in this video I'm going to be talking about my Valby build. I've made some changes since my last video. I've learned a few more things, and I'd like to go over what I think is probably the best setup uh, for this character. So, to start things off, we're running a lot of our same stuff that we were upgrading. So, non-attribute specialist is our primary damage perk that we're going to use. This scales with all of her abilities, so she also has fusion and dimension as well, but non-attribute just applies to everything, so you might as well run that. We're also going to run increased shield just so we have some more defense, and increased HP. Both of these ideally you want to upgrade completely, but as you can see with the amount of upgrades here, we're probably going to upgrade this as well. So you can see there's no tile behind it, but then there is tiles behind all of these. You want to make sure you do that for a lot of these. So like I said, this is probably going to be upgraded more, and there is still more to upgrade here, but for the most part I feel like all of the good perks I've put in here. So we're also going to run skill expansion, and you want to max this out because a lot of this build comes down to is getting much range as possible, because every single ability in your kit actually scales off range. So this scales off range, this scales off range, and one thing to mention about specifically Plop Plop is that the knockdown effect from Plop Plop actually scales off of range as well. So you can basically hit the entire screen when you have a huge skill range, and that makes it so it's just super easy to stun everything. And yeah, that's why range is so important, as well as cleanup. And then another important one to mention is Laundry Bomb also scales off range, so the orb itself is going to be bigger. So that's why we're running that, and then that is also why we're running stuff like amplification control, which also gives us more skill range and also max shield. And frugal mindset is going to lower our skill cost and give us more effect range, of course. This is going to give us more skill power and more defense, spirit and shield. Technician is going to give us more skill power. And I've been thinking about my last perk, and I'm thinking Nimble Fingers for the skill cooldown could be good, because you don't really end up running out of mana that often. So I think skill cooldown is a good choice because it allows you to use not only Plop Plop more often, but also Bubble Bullet and Laundry Bomb, which are both really good skills. Not as much cleanup, because this one you can pretty much use no matter what. It's very rare that this is on cooldown, but for these more utility focused abilities, it becomes a lot more useful. So in my previous video I mentioned that Singing Water is the best choice. I did try to make this work, and in fact there is a build that you could use with Singing Water, more specifically with the Dangerous Ambush ultimate here. So if we take a look at this, by the way, this is not the current build that I'm using, and I'm going to talk about why I don't use this build in a second here. But if we look, it says when landing a skill attack while the enemy is not targeting you, skill power at plus 6%, as well as if that enemy is immobilized, your skill power goes up by another 12%. So why is this good for Singing Water? Well, it taunts the enemies, first off, and inflicts laundry on them. But it doesn't pull them in. I don't know if this was different in the beta or if I'm misremembering. But regardless, it's not as good as I thought it was. I much prefer having the traditional Laundry Bomb where it pulls everything in. With Sing Water, it doesn't pull everything in, it just taunts enemies to attack it, and it dies pretty quickly, so it's actually not as good as I thought. But anyways, another option would be running this, and you want to run Deadly Ambush, or not Deadly, Dangerous Ambush as well. And this is going to increase your skill power because all the enemies will be taunted onto your Laundry Bomb. And that's going to give you plus 6% attack power. And of course, if you upgrade this, it's probably going to get higher. And then every time you stun, I guess immobilized. I don't really know if that applies to Plop Plop. It could. Would need some more testing. But anyways, there's a theoretical build there. Unfortunate that Sing Water isn't as good as I thought it was, because it would have been pretty good. But regardless, this is the build that I'm running now. So that's pretty much gonna cover it for this side of things, as well as for your melee. It doesn't really matter what you use, honestly. You know, it's all just preference. There's not, from what I've noticed at least, there's not a real difference between a lot of the melee attacks. Some have a little bit more range. Some are quicker than others. I prefer the quicker ones, and I also like just the way the dual claws look, so that's why I'm using it. Alright, so that is our build there. For the reactor, you basically just want to make sure you have non-attribute skill boost ratio and the optimization condition. In my case, it says Thunder Cage mounting. Those are the two big ones. You could also get the skill boost for something like Fusion or Dimension, which I don't have. As you can see, it says singular skill power boost, which we're not using, so we're not getting that boost. The reason I really like this reactor, though, is because of the skill effect range. At the very bottom, it says skill duration up and skill effect range. Skill duration is a legendary roll, that's why it's orange/yellow. And then skill effect range is a rare or purple roll. And it's giving us a lot more range, which is really nice because, like I said, this whole build really, it gains a lot of benefit from having a huge amount of range. So that's why I like running this. This is another one that has theoretically more damage, but like I said, it doesn't have range, so that's why I prefer this one. Your external components don't really matter as much. It's really just a preference thing on what you want to run. Some good ones, though, would be just max shield and max HP. And then even if you're trying to run a harder boss, for example, that relies on some of these resistances, it might be smart if you find a good one to just save it. So like, for example, this one has fire resistance on it, so I might use this for like a fire enemy. So yeah, just a small thing like that, but it doesn't, doesn't really matter. Another thing would be having one with like Coupier shard drop rate, like this one. So whenever I farm Coupier shards, but that's another story there. So our main weapon is going to be the Thunder Cage, but I will mention something. This isn't technically a boss character, so I'm mainly showing this build to be made as just everything that isn't bossing, and it does very well at that, by the way. It's just that when it comes to bossing, you don't really have the best skills for it. The one thing that I would change if you do want to do bosses with this character is use Supply Moisture, because this allows you to get attack bonus while standing in your water area, and it's going to cost 14, so you'd have to replace some stuff. A lot of the stuff, though, you don't really need in a boss fight. So, for example, like skill expansion, you don't really need that. Technician, you probably just don't need at all. Even something like non-attribute specialist, you probably don't need, because you're not going to be really trying to do damage with your skill itself. You want to rely on Supply Moisture to increase your attack, firearm attack damage while standing in the water. So hopefully that makes sense. And then you'd obviously want to run one of the antibodies too. So when it comes to bossing, for your secondary and third weapons, I'm still trying to figure out what I really like to use. I have a tamer which I've upgraded and tried to min-max a little bit, but it's just tough because the crystallization catalysts, like, you need a lot of them for this game, and the game's still pretty early. I've been mainly focusing on the Thunder Cage and obviously my Descendant itself. So I still need to upgrade some of these weapons. I don't know if the Tamer is still going to be viable in, say, like 2 weeks or something. I'm assuming it's probably going to get a nerf just because of how powerful it is relative to other weapons, or some of these legendary weapons maybe get a buff. That would be nice to see. But yeah, I mean, ultimately your other weapons don't really matter. It's mainly just like find a weapon that really fits, and I would say the Thunder Cage is really good with that. You also want to make sure that you re-roll your Thunder Cage so you get those purple, blue, and yellow stats on here. So probably the best stat I would say would be firearm attack or bonus firearm attack versus Colossus, and that's just going to help you kill the Colossi faster, so the bosses basically. If you do plan on using this in boss fights, which I do use, by the way. I have done all the way up to Obstructor. That's actually how you get Singing Water, is from killing this boss. It took me like 20 wins to actually get it, and turns out it wasn't even that good. So yeah, I mean, here's my Thunder Cage build, but I wouldn't follow this build. I would look up some other builds that are a little bit more min-maxed. I only have 3 of these in here, so look up a different Thunder Cage build. Don't use this one if you want to specifically try to figure that out. But for the Valby Descendant modules, this is what you want to run. This is what I found the most useful, and yeah, other than that, I think that's it. So hope you enjoyed. See you later.